Hello and welcome to the line. Today we got Steven calling in, causing some beef between Vice Rhino and Godless Engineer. Don't worry, no fisticuffs were thrown during the filming of this segment. Enjoy the show, y'all.
We have Steven in Michigan, and I think he wants to talk about something I'm very interested in. So hi there, Steven. How you doing?
Hey, John. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, especially after that last call. That was a little heated, but...
Yeah, I got my blood boiling a little bit when he brought up the cat.
Yeah, I wasn't going to engage him on whatever kind of game he was trying to play.
Oh, that's one of those. You know where he's going with that. Oh, genetically, it's a cat. That's how we know, or whatever.
Right, as if those were comparable at all. I wanted to ask about Jesus mythicism. John, I think you identify as a mythicist, if I'm not incorrect.
You are very, very correct.
Rhino, I'm not sure where you fall on this debate.
I fall on the I don't really care side of things. I know John will probably disagree with me with this, but I don't see that. I feel like the claim that there was an itinerant rabbi with a very common name saying a very common message for that time period in that place that managed to get himself executed by the Romans in a very common method of execution. It's just such a mundane claim that I don't see the point in arguing with it. It was just, okay, fine. I'm not a scholar. I don't know whether or not the guy exists, but I'll just grant that for the sake of argument and move on. That's usually my position.
And I'll be a little surprising for Vice here. I'm perfectly fine with people having that position of not caring. This is definitely a very niche sort of topic to discuss, and unless you're just really wanting to know or really wanting to engage in the topic, then I'm perfectly fine with people just not giving a flying fuck about it. So I know everybody kind of paints me as like, I guess maybe a radical mythicist, maybe, but I really don't give a fuck if somebody cares whether or not Jesus existed. I have my own opinions. Like, I feel like everybody should care, but ultimately I don't care if people don't care.
Right. We're all atheists, so it's not as important to us as somebody who would base their entire life around the idea that this guy definitely existed. And then not only that, but died and came back to life and was God too. So I also wanted to ask, what do you think is the best argument for Jesus mythicism, if there is a way to do that in a soundbite?
Oh yeah, definitely. I can definitely do that. Well, so the thing that really kind of I latch on to is the fact that the only independent reference that we have is Paul in his epistles. And in Paul's epistles, he never indicates anybody as an eyewitness or a disciple. He never talks about Jesus's life on earth, his ministry, his miracles, or anything like that. All we have is Paul clearly separating himself in Galatians 1:11 from any kind of historical sourcing that he could use ever. And he only cites visions and scriptures as the way that he knows anything about Jesus. So the fact that there's only Paul that is the ultimate source, the only independent source for this Jesus character, he never saw him. He doesn't know anybody that physically saw him here on earth. That to me kind of piques my interest and gets me thinking about
John, what about in Galatians where he says he went and met Peter and he disagreed with Peter about stuff? Yeah, right. I think it's Galatians 1. He opposes Peter to his face.
We're gonna have a host fight. We're gonna have a host fight. Okay, so where in Paul's epistles does Paul indicate that Peter is a disciple and not just an apostle?
Well, okay, this is relying on the definitions of disciple and apostle are all very slippery. So I think we can both agree on that. So yeah, no, he doesn't specifically come out and say that this Peter guy is the guy who walked and talked with Jesus, but it's very heavily implied.
Well, no, okay, so
one of the non-forged letters.
Yeah, Galatians is one of the typically accepted genuine letters.
So So for Peter, for disciple and apostle, I'm not talking about how we use the words now, because obviously Christians have intermingled the definitions of both words.
It's not
But
clear in the
as
Bible
far
either,
as
though.
Paul,
It gets mixed up there too.
well, no. Paul's very clear about what makes an apostle. Paul says that an apostle is somebody who has witnessed the resurrection of the resurrected Jesus and has gotten a message from a resurrected Jesus. So Paul only ever indicates anybody as being an apostle. Disciples, though, those were people that actually walked with Jesus. Those were people that knew Jesus while he was physically living on earth. So Paul never indicates anybody to be a disciple or to have physically witnessed Jesus or anything like that. So I get that he talks to Peter, and I totally agree Peter existed. I just, considering Paul, his theology, and how he references these people, it does not seem to me like Paul knows anybody that saw Jesus while he was actually walking on earth.
I find it hard to square that with, like, Peter was a historical person without also going to Jesus was a historical person, unless you're going to claim, unless your position is that Peter made up, or like Peter was part of the myth building process. You just
no. So everything that we know about, well, just like Paul says, everything that we know about Jesus comes from the scriptures. So the fact that Paul and Peter both discerned the same message of Jesus, the same information about Jesus from the scriptures, would be.
We don't actually know what Peter believed, because we don't have any writings from Peter. We just have Paul opposing Peter, and then people writing in Peter's name about 100 years, 50 years later.
Well, no. See, Peter, as far as like information about Jesus goes, Peter believed the exact same thing that Paul did. In Galatians 2, Paul talks about how he came back to Jerusalem and he conferred with the other apostles that were there, including Peter, and he gained no new information from them, and he was teaching the exact same message as they were. So Paul's information about Jesus is the exact same information about Jesus that Peter has.
I might be a bit sketchy on the details, but was he saying that he was teaching the exact same message? Because I feel like he was saying that, like,
yes.
I didn't let them affect my message. I'm teaching the message that I got from Jesus. And he didn't actually say...
he says that, but he also said... Sorry.
We're getting off track here. Stephen, is there anything you want to add to the discussion? You're the one calling, after all.
No, it's an interesting discussion, but I do think that there is a lot to say on the topic. I wonder just how well established Paul's historicity is.
Paul's
pretty well established.
I think Vice had said, if Peter's real, then why not Jesus, or something to that effect.
Right. Well, Paul's definitely real.
On the historicity of Peter.
We really only have writings from Paul that talk about Peter and talk about meeting Peter and everything like that. As far as Peter goes, I have no qualms with accepting that Peter actually existed. I think the debate, Vice and I have shown here, is whether or not he was an apostle or just an apostle, or also a disciple. Like he met the Jesus like while he was still living on earth.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess the last thing I was just curious about before I go is, John, what do you think would be the best argument for the historicity of Jesus?
Ironically enough, I think the strongest evidence is Paul's writings, because yes, that's why it's such an interesting discussion to be had, because Paul's writings it has a lot of ambiguity in it, to where it could swing both ways. It can swing the way of Jesus existing on earth, and it could swing the way of Jesus being a purely celestial being that was only prophesied to have come and then only appeared to people after he died. And and that's how his religion, the religion, started. The initial Jewish Christians were very diverse in what they believed. The Nag Hammadi library actually has a lot of different versions of Jesus that exist. And so for me, at least, it only makes sense that there was no historical Jesus to double check information against. And that's how all these different versions of Jesus popped up, because everybody was interpreting different things from the scriptures. But anyways, Paul is the best, I would say, historical information that you could hope to use to argue for a historical Jesus.
I'm partial to I've heard this is one that can go both ways as well, but I'm kind of partial to the birth narrative thing, where this Jesus guy, the prophecies say he's supposed to be from Bethlehem, but we know that he's from Nazareth. So he has these two conflicting birth stories written about him to kind of harmonize how this guy from Nazareth could actually be from Bethlehem. And then there's Matthew or Luke threw in the bit about Egypt as well. I know this has been used to argue on the mythicist side of things as well. Are you about to say how Nazareth didn't exist till the first century?
No, that's not what I'm going to say. Actually, the Nazareth and Bethlehem harmonization is used to harmonize two different prophecies in the Old Testament that indicate that Jesus is known as a Nazarite, but also he's born in the town of David, which is Bethlehem. So it's just a way that they were able to harmonize those prophecies that are about these two different places that he's supposed to be from. It's like, well, how can this be? Oh, well, and then in Matthew, you've got the mirror story that shows Jesus as the new Moses, and then of course in Luke's he just made some shit up. It kind of seems like it's under mysticism, at least the whole birth thing is perfectly explainable, at least from my point of view.
No, it can go both ways.
Right. And that's why it's the best information you can use.
You have anything else you'd like to say, Stephen?
Well, before I will say that, Rhino, for someone who claims to be so disinterested, you sure are educated on the topic.
Well, I've read
weird
books, and I've read some of Ehrman's books where he says Carrier's a nutcase for even spending time on the matter. And I've read the scriptures. I don't know. To me, it's just like what G said, like the Paul attesting to the historicity of Peter, and I just don't see why. I can kind of see how it could go both ways, but I feel like that kind of argues more in favor of a real dude. Now, how accurate is the Bible about what this real dude said and did? Not very accurate, I wouldn't think. But I feel like there is.
You don't think that walking on water is indisputable?
No.
Or the fish thing? No. All right.
Water to wine, though. That one's legit.
Take my call.
All right. Thanks for calling.
Well, I really appreciate you calling in, man. I had fun.
That was a good palate cleanser.
Likewise.
We had a couple of angry calls before that. It was nice to loosen up a bit.
Thank you so much for calling in, man. Oh, I think he had already dropped. Anyways, that was fun.
See, look, people can disagree and still get along with each other. People can disagree and still get along with each other.
I'm totally fine with you. And I'm totally fine with people disagreeing with me about Jesus. I know that I'm in the minority, of this particular topic. I'm still a little confused as to how Peter existing means that Jesus has to exist. But maybe we can talk about that some other time. I don't want to.
Has to. I just feel like Occam's razor kind of makes it more likely that he did.
I'll stifle myself.
It would certainly help if he actually had some writings from Peter. I'll grant that.
Yeah.